In this episode, we discuss how information is the foundational metaphorical structure from which all other metaphorical structures are derived. Welcome to the Bottom Turtle Podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Bottom Turtle Podcast. My name is Dr. Shannon Ray, and we're joined by our co-host, Oyani Onemiya. How you doing, Oyani?
I'm doing okay, Shan. What up? How's your week been?
My week's been all right. So this is our third third time's the charm.
Yeah, because we were trying to mess with the volume and the sound and recording stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were talking about your fist getting better.
Yeah. So I was saying before that my hand is getting better. Yeah. And so, for the audience who don't know, like I train martial arts, like I train boxing and kickboxing and jiu-jitsu and stuff like that. And for the boxing and kickboxing stuff, most of that is just like me studying it at home by myself. You know what I mean? I don't take classes or anything like that, but I kind of just study it like a math problem or a physics problem and just kind of like, tweak this goes that. Oh, I'll train that and do this. And, when I first started learning how to strike, I wanted to learn without using gloves. So I wanted to do bare knuckle, punch in the bag. And at one point with my left hand, I had my wedding ring on. I forgot to take it off, and I hit the bag in a specific way that just damaged my hand. And my hand has been screwed up for like 4 or 5 months now, and I'm just now getting to the point where I can actually make a fist with it.
Oh yeah, and now when I see you in your videos with the gloves on, it's interesting because I've always been an advocate from gloves from day one, like from just day one. I wasn't even willing to chance it.
Yeah.
Especially because I work with my hands. I always want to draw with my hands, and something going wrong with my fingers is like a recurrent nightmare for me. Oh no, my fingers are all cut off. I can't draw anymore. I can't I don't know what to do with myself. I don't know. I might not.
Yeah, I feel you. Yeah. Well, like I know that your concerns were largely like the idea when you're throwing a punch and you're trying to deliver force to the target. You have to make sure that your wrists are nice and reinforced and that your fist is clenched and that you're punching at the correct angle and all this stuff. And without gloves and wraps, that can go wrong and you can mess everything up. But that wasn't really the issue. The issue was I forgot to take off my damn ring, and then the ring damaged my hand. But now that I know what it's like to have a completely messed up hand, I never want to chance it.
Yeah. Especially because it took away from your ability to box for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
Because me, I couldn't even do nothing when mine started. I couldn't even play video games or even do anything. And luckily it was on my left hand. Yeah. So I was still able to do some work. But yeah, man, it's not.
I don't even know how yours got messed up. I think that's still a mystery.
I have no clue.
Yeah.
It just steadily got bad.
The reason why I started posting all those videos of kicking instead of punching was because my hand was messed up. I might as well do this now.
I figured like, he's punching a lot now. That might be why.
You mean kicking a lot?
Kicking a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
But I haven't been to, because I have a boxing gym that I go to by my house, but I haven't been there since this pandemic started. I actually canceled my membership. So I'm hoping that pretty soon I'll be able to go back.
Yeah. I would think you need to get a floor-to-ceiling bag and put it in your basement.
Man, I've been thinking about it, but I'm wondering, like, what would all that sweat do down there, though?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you just get like a mat. Get some mat and put it down.
Slide around on a mat, right?
I mean, it would be all right.
Yeah. I don't know. I might think about it. Because if I had something like that in my basement, for sure, I'll be down there more.
Yeah, it's great.
It's a great way to release steam and, a great workout.
Train your mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's pretty dope.
Yep.
But yeah, this week we talked about, you had sent me actually a Donald Hoffman video. That was pretty interesting. Yeah. I think we posted that on the
on the subreddit. I got that from a guy called Earl of Tyrone on Reddit. I made a post and he commented on it and said you should check out this Donald Hoffman video. So I checked it out. And essentially, the video is he's making the same argument that we made in the first episode about the fact that we're simulating all of this and that what we see is an actual reality. But instead, it is essentially, I mean, he even used the desktop on a computer metaphor.
Yeah, that was like, brilliant. I loved it.
Yeah, where he's basically saying, like, whenever you're interacting with a computer, you don't want to actually have to know what it's like to be dealing with transistors and all the stuff that's going on in the background. You want to just take your mouse, click the thing, and then have
open
stuff
it
work.
And type in and click send. Like all of the stuff going on behind the scenes. Can you imagine if you had to interact with that every single time you had to send an email? You would not want to send an email ever.
Yeah. Or you get really good at basically thinking in binary. Yeah. Essentially, what you'd have to do. And so it's just another. I feel like it's, I don't want to say validation, but it's just another way of approaching the same argument we made, where we made the approach of trying to imagine what it would be like to see the world without using the lens of a mind.
Yeah.
And so, it's an interesting video. What was the name of that video again?
Space-time something.
The Death of Space-Time?
The Death of Space-Time and Birth of Conscious Agents.
Okay, yeah, that's what it's called.
That's what it's called.
Yeah, and we posted it on our subreddit, so if anyone wants to check it out, you can go there.
It's a great video, and I love, how, the examples that he gave. And I'm a little bit upset that they cut out the question and answer session, though. Because that would have been really juicy to see what questions he had to answer on the fly based off of his construct.
I think he answered a few, though. There were some questions that were asked.
They were asked. Talk. But when he ended it, he was like, so I'm going to end right here and then I'll take some questions. And then people's hands went up and then the video just ends there. I'm like, oh man, really?
Yeah.
So, but one of the things I loved about the video again was he made a number of references to the Matrix that I loved.
Yep. I was going to bring that up.
Matrix quotes in there, which is also great.
Yep. He did use the thing where he said it's basically like the Matrix.
Yeah.
But again, in our second episode, we were arguing, it's like the Matrix, but this idea that it's like the Matrix in the sense that there's some higher society that's programming reality for us, we don't know that, but it is like the Matrix in that our systems are simulating reality. That is the extent to which it's like the Matrix.
And it's interesting because the same way we can accept the fact that when we watch the Matrix, we can watch the Matrix and go, so some programmer dude just came and just programmed this whole universe and, we can accept that, and if we keep going down, we get to information at the very bottom of it. We could accept that in that reality, but it's so difficult for us to accept that here.
Exactly.
It is possible. It is possible to construct a whole reality based off of on the back of information.
On the back of information. Yeah, because we watch. Yeah, everyone watches The Matrix. They're not confused about the premise. They understand that someone coded an entire reality inside of a computer. Yeah, I accept that. That's how computers work. And when you think about what computer code is, when you're writing code, because, I've had to write a crap ton of code in my life. Mostly I've written, I actually first started writing code in C++, because when I was an undergraduate, I did particle physics research for this experiment at Fermilab called the Main Injector Particle Production Experiment. And so I first got into coding using C++. Then I started using stuff like MATLAB, and then for my graduate work, I ended up using MATLAB and C. So I mostly program in C. But when you're writing code, you use words like for, if, then, while, and to write algorithms. And then you compile the code. And the compiling process basically takes those words, the algorithms you've written in those words, and then breaks it down into something the computer can understand, which is like binary. And binary is just a means of conceptualizing a configuration, which you then use to change the configuration of the computer. So again, it's information when you get down to it.
And that's kind of why we're saying on the last episode, what else is there?
Exactly.
There's literally nothing else when you break it down to and just we're just trying to find correlation between these ideas or these concepts, or if you just keep pulling it apart, that's all you get at the bottom. And one of the most interesting quotes that Donald Huffman made in that video that stuck with me, he said, and I really wish that this was incorporated into the Matrix somehow. He said, "You are living in the data structure."
Yes, exactly.
I felt it in my heart when he said that. It's like, you are living in the data structure, guys.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is soft reality. Yeah. He called it living in a data structure. We're calling it soft reality. Yeah. That's where you live. That's what we said in the second episode.
Yeah.
Yes.
And all we do is just interact with it. And I love how he broke it down to almost like a user interface problem, which for me as a designer, I totally understand the purpose of a user interface. If you go back to his analogy about the desktop icon for sending emails or whatever, the icon is solving a user interface problem. It's like, how do I get this user to interact with this thing?
Yep.
And that's this. Yeah. And
I can definitely see why it speaks to you so much.
Yeah, it does. It does. You are living in a data structure. Like, I felt that shit in my bones when you said that. Yes. We are living in a data structure. Yeah.
We're trying to communicate that same feeling and how we're constructing our arguments. And, from the last episode, there was, the idea of comparing it to the Matrix to make our argument that information is what you build everything on. We also forgot to mention again that model that we mentioned in the last episode, this ideal model that's correlated to everything and can predict the future to infinite precision always.
The God model.
Not only,
The God model?
Yeah, the God model. I guess we can start calling it that, the God model. Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah. That's what it is. It's called the God model. That's a good. I like that. So the God model is also not only the all-knowing, but it's also all-powerful, because everything is just algorithmic. When X, then Y, because of Z. And so to ever create anything, you need to know the sequence, the algorithm that goes, all right, I take this input X, I get this output Y. Then I take that output Y and I use that to get another output. And it's just a sequence. And so if you know exactly what Y will become always, then you will know how to create anything. Because you will always be able to predict the future. Oh, this will become this, and then you can go, oh, that comes that comes that, that comes that. You can just follow the sequence, and then you can just bring whatever you want into existence within the constraints of the reality that you're in.
I think that it's so beautiful, and if more people start to pay, more attention to, the things that they do, or how computer programs work, apps work, or website design works, we start to get snippets of, what the construct really looks like.
Yep.
So one example I can actually say is, when this whole pandemic thing started, I was really bored at home, and I remembered, I was really into, Scrabble a couple of years ago.
I thought you were going to say crossword puzzles again.
Oh yeah. I'm always into some board game. Trust me, guys. But so I was like, you know what? Let me get back into playing Scrabble. I haven't played it in years, so I got back into playing it again. And I've been playing it, really religiously for 6 or 7 months now. Like, I play
like online or something.
Online, yeah. So I have.
I remember your strategy. You want to tell people your strategy for Scrabble?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's not a unique strategy, but I think that it is the best and most effective way to play it, especially on an amateur level. Because apparently, and I did some research, and I'm going on a tangent here, but when you go into professional high level Scrabble, they don't play it how I play it. The goal is to literally play the longest and most high scoring point as possible every single time. That is the goal for when you get to high level Scrabble. But in the amateur professional level, which I feel like I am, you play more defensively. So basically your game plan is to try to open up as little double words or triple words as possible. And just wait for the person to keep opening them up for you. You take it, close it up so he doesn't have anything else to play. They have to open up something else for you. You take it and close it up. The better you get at doing this, the more difficult you will be to beat at Scrabble. Because rather than, sometimes I'll see a word that could get me 50 points. But I'm like, if I put this here, I've exposed this triple word for this person to come jump on. I would rather take the 20-point hit and play something that only gives me 20 points so that person doesn't get access to a specific part of the board that I don't want them to get access to. So it's a full-on strategy game. And the reason I brought this up is because when we talk about the God model, we can kind of bring this down into a small localized universe of Scrabble, for example. So let's imagine that Scrabble is the world that we live in right now.
Okay.
A lot of these Scrabble programs on your phone or apps or whatever, the algorithm that runs them knows every single word that is possible to be played at any point in time on that board. It's not difficult math to figure out. It's really not. So what essentially we should be trying to do is we're trying to get to a point where, of course, you're never going to have access to every single answer to every single problem. But if we bring it back to Scrabble, for example, every word that you play, if I play B-O-Y, boy, and it's your turn, you can't just go and play girl on another part of the board. You have to continue from where I stopped at.
Yeah.
You have to build off of that. And that's exactly what we're saying here is where, we're building these ideas off of other ideas and off of other ideas, and we're just building that shit. But when you strip it all the way down, it's not there, bro. It's just information that's down there. That's
it. Yeah.
And the Scrabble universe is a great analogy to kind of look at it, to where just imagine that the God model is the algorithm that knows every single word that could be played. We're trying to achieve that. We might never get there.
Yes. But yeah. And what you're saying is that like in the boy, like when you play a word on Scrabble, they have to start from, like, I don't actually know exactly how Scrabble works, but I'm assuming like it works like, you know, you can only build off what's already been placed there.
They built, yes.
And so in this case, what we're saying is that the very first thing that you have to build everything else off of in Scrabble is information. And then everything else can be built off of that.
Keep building up that. And you cannot build anything else aside from that. It can't just exist in a vacuum on its own over there. It will have no meaning to anybody else. It means nothing. Yeah. Yes. So in the Scrabble universe, if you do that, it means nothing. It's like, what are you doing? That means nothing. It's just sitting over there. It has no correlation to anything else in this universe. Yeah.
Yep. And that's the thing, is like what we're trying to say is that because everything, like the Donald Hoffman thing, is that everything is a model. And we said in the last episode that information is correlations between structure. And so to use language to imbue meaning, there must be correlations between structure. And so that creates context that then places meaning on things. And so the whole point is that we have this freedom to choose how we discuss the model, like what our base concepts are that we build things off of. Like it's basically like we're stuck in the space of metaphors. Actually, I think I wrote it down, a specific way of saying it. Yeah, like a metaphorical structure is a network of correlations between concepts that creates context in which meaning arises. So it's a network of correlations between concepts that creates context in which meaning arises. That's what a metaphorical structure is. And what we're trying to say is that if we're trying to build this God model, if we're trying to build that, then we want to use, like you were saying, a metaphorical structure that is the basis on which all other metaphorical structures are placed. Yeah. So when you create metaphor, you're using one concept to explain another concept. This is how you create metaphor. And so just like in our last episode, when we were talking about the celestial model and how when you start talking about what winter is, like when winters comes, it snows. When we took that phrase and then put it in this larger model, suddenly it had all this correlation to this larger context. And so that larger context places all this meaning on it. And what we're trying to do is make it to where whenever you have a concept you're trying to communicate, that if you can find the correlations between all the other metaphorical models, all the other things that create context, then when you say a statement, all of those metaphors place meaning on that concept at once. And so if you're trying to create an extremely powerful model that can conceptualize reality to the point where we're getting closer to the God model, we want to create something that when you have one concept, that concept is housed in the space of all logically sound, consistent concepts, and then you get all this meaning
on there. And it's so much better because then we can start to have more nuanced conversations because we have a shared basis of where we're starting out from.
Yeah.
We have that collective agreement that, okay, so if all of this is built off of the back of information, when we have conversations about anything at all, we can always pull the threads and go all the way back into, and it's such a great way for you to kind of like stress test whatever idea you have in your head. Like, okay, if I trace this here and this concept here, blah, blah, almost like when you see one word on a Scrabble board, for example, you can follow that word to keep knowing what word was created from that.
Yes.
What word was created from that. And then on and on. Like, I could just visualize all this in my head because I play so many word games. And it's such a fundamental rule. It's like you have to connect them.
Yes.
You can't just make a word over there and it makes no sense to anybody. And it's literally the exact same thing.
And the reason we have to do that is because we have to use language to conceptualize. And language, at the end of the day, when you break it down, is just correlations between structure. Yeah. And so when we're trying to create meaning, then we have to fundamentally start off with metaphor. And these metaphors imbue meaning on each other. So whenever you're following a path, like you were saying on the Scrabble board, from one thing to the other, then you can see how you started from concept A, constructed a sequence of metaphors, go from this metaphor to that metaphor to that metaphor. Oh, it's like, oh, now I'm at point B. And what we've been doing in the podcast is we have been trying to construct all of these different metaphors. Like if you actually listen to some of our past episodes, like we're talking about computers and minds and computer algorithms. We're talking about physical systems and how computer systems work. We're talking about information games. Like we're talking about games and objective functions. Like we're always identifying how these things are similar. And one of the examples I think that makes this clear is when we were talking about what was it? Oh yeah, the idea of computers and bodies. So the whole point with that is when you're taking a step from one metaphor to the other, you have to find the symmetries, that the intersecting point in which they're symmetric, in which they're the same. That's why metaphors are used to model one thing with something else. It's because there's a symmetry that connects the two things, so you can step from one to the next. And like one of our base arguments is like, look, a computer is a physical system, a physical subsystem of the universe. A body is a physical subsystem of the universe. And so in that sense, we know that these systems can change their configuration based off the inputs and how they process data. So we know that's true. And then our argument for why we know that's true is because I can tell you a secret, and then that has to rewrite your physical system to carry the data of that secret, like a memory card. So these are the symmetries we're identifying so that we can create our metaphor. And then from there, we can take the understanding of computers in the ways in which they're symmetric, and we take all that understanding of computation, the study of computation, and then we can use that to imbue meaning on physical systems like bodies and how they function and move.
Yeah.
And this is what we've been doing the entire time. If you go back and listen to our episodes, it is, here's this thing, it's like this thing, here is how they're symmetric, and then here's the observation that justifies the symmetry.
Which is all algebra is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah. So what was it? There was the other concept that we used. 'Cause I wanted to give another example just to like hit this home to the audience, and that was the example of minds and computer algorithms. Because again, we identified that we have these two physical systems, and we know that a computer algorithm, when it's running on a computer, that is changing the physical state of the system. And so we also know that, again, using nomentation without representation, which is one of our principles that does a lot of our heavy lifting of our arguments, that when you're thinking, you have to be going through a path through the space of configurations. And so your mind, as it's processing data and it's thinking, it's changing the configuration of the system. So this is the symmetry again, and this is why we said specifically the symmetry between minds and computer algorithms. This is how we're building our metaphorical structure. We're identifying symmetries, and then we're using physical observations that anyone can verify to justify the fact that it is a symmetry, and then we're using the data to imbue meaning on the two metaphors where we found the symmetries between them.
Yeah. And that's kind of where information comes in, because when you start to like trace those, symmetries around, or we start to like interpret everything in terms of information or whatever, we start to see that these symmetries can start from one point and go to the other point, but you can always find your way back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is the brilliant, you can always just find your way back if you follow. I think the example of the Medusa head that you had used was pretty great, because, you can come out of, the blob.
But do you want to start, you explain like the idea of the Medusa head with the snakes, and then like, you want to go ahead and...
Yeah, go ahead. No, you can do it. It's your metaphor.
Yeah. So the idea is, you imagine that you have a Medusa head, and imagine that the Medusa head is the base. That is like the concept of information. And then each snake that emanates from the head, imagine that as being a metaphorical structure. So what you do is you start off with one metaphorical structure, and then you break it down into information, which is like starting from one, like the head of the snake, and then going down to the base. You hit the base, you're at information. Then you move along the information base until you reach the base of another snake. And then you move back up that snake. Yeah. And so what you've done when you put information as the basis is it allows you to follow symmetries down from from one metaphorical structure to information and up another metaphorical structure, and that creates a path. And that path is the correlation between those two metaphorical structures.
I think that it's something that we all have to just start to observe in our daily lives, how much this plays a role in how our universe or our reality is structured.
Yeah, and how we conceptualize.
Yeah.
This is the whole point. We're trying to build the space of conceptualization. This is how we're organizing data in our head, and how we process data, like, fundamentally. And you can also imagine, with the Medusa head example, that you can go down one, like, you can imagine, like, creating a bunch of closed loops. And so imagine there's a point on the Medusa head, and I can find two snakes, and I can find a loop between those two snakes, but then I can go to another set of snakes, and I can find another loop around there. Yeah. And so you're starting from one point, going through a loop, and coming back to the same point. And so that path tells you information about how one thing, because, when you're following these paths, you're following a set of metaphors. So you're going, okay, this becomes this, and then this becomes that, and then this becomes that, and that's what it means to go. It's like following the sequence of an algorithm. You're just following the sequence of how this becomes this becomes that, and this is essentially, like, again, we can relate this to the idea of stories, because this is what stories fundamentally are. They're telling you how one thing becomes another thing.
And and the best stories are the ones that, you can actually follow along to see, okay, how did this one thing get to this spot? And this is essentially why, us building this language, using information as the basis of it, is so important, because what it does is it gives us some form of guidance to how we can interpret a lot of things. Like, even things, sometimes we've had conversations about things like movies, like art, or like literature, things like that. And we can clearly break all of this down to, like, the intention of the writer or the producer.
Yes.
Down to, like, information, and just really trying to see, and then when we talk about it, we can use these languages to judge these forms of art more effectively. Like, the wide ranging use, if more and more people adapt this ideology, is that we can have more nuanced conversation, kind of like what we talked about, where we're breaking down, the concept into smaller pieces and just increasing the resolution of it. That's what information will do for us eventually, if we start to bring everything back down to the idea of the bedrock of everything is information. We can have more nuanced conversations, and our conversations are going to be based on, actual, stuff that we can proof, that we can actually trace back to back to information, as opposed to, I don't like this movie because I don't like it. It's like, this was a bad movie because XYZ, the structure of this was wrong. We can see all that shit.
You can see where you can actually identify a point where there's a discontinuity and some logical reasoning. Like, oh wait, before they were doing this, but now they could do this all of a sudden. There's a discontinuity there. And it's that discontinuity that's when you start thinking, is there some sort of there's no that wasn't a symmetry. You didn't cross a symmetry to get there. There's like a symmetry gap. You
just went from here to here.
You just went from one world to another without filling in the gap of how that happened. And that's how you can start identifying, this is a crap story. Because the whole point of the story is that you're supposed to be following metaphors from one state to another. To where you can, so then you can follow the path. Go, this becomes this, then this begets this, and then this begets that. And then you can understand how things go from one to the other. And then that understanding, that metaphorical structure, is your story, it's your context, it's the Z. And essentially what we're trying to do is we're trying to take that Z box, when X, then Y because of Z. The box Z, the context, we're trying to fit everything in there. All of these symmetric ways of interpreting something. We want all of them to be there because, like we were saying, once you have all of those symmetries in that box to interpret one, how X becomes Y, then you start, as long as you follow the symmetries, they all imbue meaning. So you're getting all this meaning from this grand narrative, essentially. And another thing that's really important about all of this is one of my good friends, Shelton. He's a coworker of mine and a friend. And one of the statements that I love that he said was, classical information theory is applied probability theory. And quantum information theory is algebratized classical information theory. Yeah. And so what this tells you is that the concept of algebra is the concept of changing something without changing it.
Changing it, yeah.
It is to follow a symmetry. It's to change it without changing it. And one of the best examples that I really like, that I feel like most people will be able to connect with, is the idea that the square root of 2 divided by 2 is equal to 1 over the square root of 2.
Yep.
Now, if anyone were to write that down, just write down on a piece of paper the square root of 2 divided by 2, and then on the same paper write down 1 over 1 divided by the square root of 2, and look at that. Does that look the same to you just by looking at it? Like, it doesn't. They don't look the same. But if you take the square root of 2 divided by 2 and you multiply it by the square root of by the square root of 2 divided by itself, and you cross multiply the numerators and the denominators, then you end up getting 1 over the square root of 2, but you've essentially multiplied it by 1. You didn't do anything to it, but you transformed how it looked.
I don't know that too many people will get that one because, once we start to get into like algebra, people start to like balk. But as soon as I saw it, I was like, okay. It makes sense.
It's a great example because it's a simple example, but if you were to look at those two numbers written down, there's just I wouldn't even have thought that those two things were the same thing until it's like, oh yeah, of course they're the same, and so when we're trying to build these symmetries, we're building the algebra, we're building the structure that connects all of them. And of course, we want to start at our basis as being information because what else is there? It is the foundation on which all other metaphorical structures are going to be built because all metaphors, they create meaning through correlations. Yeah, anyway.
Yeah, and I think that the more symmetries that we can, construct from these, we could tell more complex stories. We can create more things. Like we can actually extrapolate more meaning from things. Like it doesn't end. It just steps up that
super powerful.
Yeah. It just doesn't end. Yeah.
Yeah. Step up our metaphor game. And one thing like we were saying is that, so if at the end of the day, what we're kind of saying is that let's use the mathematical structure that is used in quantum information theory and find the symmetries between all these other metaphorical structures. Like everything is a story, everything is computing, everything is however many equivalent things that we've constructed throughout this podcast.
Yeah. It's just a symmetry. That's all we're doing.
Yeah, but and then imagine that you take that because when you find the symmetries, they imbue meaning on each other. Then you take all the mathematical structure of quantum information theory and it imbues meaning on all of those things. So now suddenly you can start talking about stories and language at the level of applied probability theory and algebra, essentially.
It might seem like, that seems like a stretch, but I'm pretty sure that as this podcast goes on, we're going to start to talk about movies and stuff, and you will see how we can apply a lot of these ideas to just regular conversations about art, about, movies and things like that. And I think just even, for my, fellow web design or, graphic design, people out there.
Yeah.
When you have a web app, and a perfect example, I'll give you something like Figma. So Figma is a design app that is mostly web based. Essentially, they started out as a web based app, and one of the best things about Figma was that it was web based to where you didn't need to download any software to use it. You just needed to go on the website, and then you'll be able to access the software to kind of design stuff like some of those rings that you make in your research or whatever. You can do it on Figma, but rather than downloading a software to do it is a web application that runs off of web technology itself. The drawback of what Figma have been able to create is that the software itself can only be as good as web technology is as good. It's almost like it's plugged into each other to where, well, this is the extent of what web technology can do, so this is the extent of what this thing can do. And the more we start to the more web technology has developed over time, the more robust
powerful that thing
Figma has gotten. Is the same thing.
Yeah.
We're just building off of it.
Yeah.
And so the more we can find these symmetries, the more we can have these conversations that are, more that if we trace the conversation down, we get back to information, we can start to build more and more robust, concepts. Yeah.
Yeah. And it makes it to where, we were saying, that you can start discussing these things at the level of linear algebra and transformations and so you're speaking far more precise about basically it's like going down another level. Like I feel like there's a lot of different ways of thinking that can only go to a certain level because they're not quantized. But the whole point is that information theory has this quantized mathematical structure on it. So now suddenly you can take that quantized mathematical structure and start using it to discuss things like language. And it's just going to make our models more precise, which allows us to make more complicated metaphorical structures to predict the future. And there was, in the last episode, you said something like, and I think it was a really great statement, that when we took the celestial model argument, that because that statement is now correlated to this larger celestial model, you can see further. You can see more. So the point to this is, once we tie everything to information this way, it's like, imagine someone turning on a light. Like they pull a switch and now it's like, oh, we can see way further now.
It's like getting a better TV.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, we had
a higher definition TV. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I remember when I remember this so clearly when CD players first came to Nigeria. Mm-hmm. And the first time I listened to a CD player, it blew my mind.
Oh, really?
My mind was blown. I'm not even.
How old were you?
My mind was blown.
Please don't say 15.
I think I was like my senior year in. Maybe I was a year before. It was a year before my senior year of high school.
Oh shit!
Yes. And all this while I was listening to music. That's exactly what this is to me. It's like I was listening to music on a Walkman, like regular with a cassette in there, whatever. Yeah. It was great. As a matter of fact, I didn't think it was bad. I just thought this is how music sounds, and I'm just going about my way, enjoying my music, blah blah, nothing to see here. And then I go to school one day, and this girl comes in, and her brother just came back from the U.S. and he got her a CD player. And she had I didn't remember, it was Celine Dion. I remember exactly what CD was. It was Celine Dion, guys. I was into Celine Dion big time back then.
Isn't in Nigeria she a big deal?
Is
it just common that everyone likes it? Okay, big deal. You're just in the norm.
So it was, I wasn't out of place listening to Celine Dion at the time. It was like regular stuff.
Yeah.
So, I popped that thing into the CD player and I put the headphones on, and you don't understand, and that's what we were saying, the resolution changed, the quality. It was from, okay, this is trash now. I can see now. That's exactly what I felt like. It's like I couldn't see before, and I can see now. And that's exactly what we're trying to say, that all of this is going to do, is we're trying to increase the resolution at which we can see the conceptual space, and it will help us have better conversations and create better.
Yep. Yes.
Because we know exactly what we're doing, we know exactly what we're looking for.
So then we can be better at working toward that God. Because the thing about that God algorithm is, we're not going to create. Because part of that God algorithm is it's so idealized that we made the argument. I mean, it can predict the future to infinite precision. That's not possible. I'm very confident that you cannot predict anything to infinite precision. Yeah. So it's not something that can actually be made, but it's an ideal. It's an ideal to work toward.
Yes.
Yeah, because you can move further away from it. That's for sure.
Yes, for
sure. You can build shitty models that don't predict anything.
But you're trying to hit it every time. Yes.
Yeah.
I feel.
And so think about the accumulation of human knowledge. If we take all of the human knowledge that we've constructed so far and then place it on this structure, and then from there start breaking down ideas in a higher precision, and then everyone's using that language so that then they're taking their experience, because everyone, like I was saying before the podcast, that you can imagine a baker, and a baker has all this experience baking, so they start using the metaphors of baking. They're like, oh, everything is just like baking. They start using that as their base metaphor to see the world, and that is based off experience. So imagine the set of all games, information games people can play and have played and are playing, and how it colors their metaphors they use. And then imagine them taking that and placing it on this structure and finding the symmetries. And then we're all just taking all of our experience and metaphorical structure and just trying to say, all right, how does this fit on this puzzle, on this giant Scrabble board?
You don't know how good I feel just to imagine a society like that.
Yeah.
It just feels like we will just achieve so much more.
Oh, yeah.
Because there will be less room for... Yeah, there will be less room for okay, this thing, there's less room for bullshit. It's like, is this it or is this not it? Okay, let's trace it back down. Yeah, that doesn't follow. It's that almost like a Scrabble board. It's so clear to see when someone plays boy at the corner of the board. Like, can you take that off, please? That makes no sense. It's not connected to these guys down here. Like, yeah, it's just it is that simple, bro.
Can you take that off, please?
That's exactly how I see it. So I think it's brilliant, and that's kind of why I really love that we started to put out this podcast, because I'm hoping that, like our conversations over the years has changed when we talk about a lot of things like movies or like our jobs or business or society, like. Being able to talk about it from this standpoint to where we're building our narrative or our metaphors off of the back of, this structure, it's really helped us communicate better.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Like we really just agree about stuff. Yeah. Because you are going to try to like get your point across using this language, this shared language that we have. That's what you're going to use to try to get your point across to me. And then I'll respond that way. We just get shit done.
Yeah. It's far easier, far less confusion. And like we were saying before, the basis for the symmetries is observation. Like we're saying this is a symmetry because when you observe this is how these things are connected. It's just, it's like when I tell you a secret, it's like a memory card. Are you going to deny this? Are we just going to pretend as though that's not true?
Yeah, I tell you a secret, you write it on your memory card and just go over to your friend's house and plug it into their PlayStation, and now they have it now.
Yeah, and now they have it. Yeah, and it's just like stuff like, and so that's why we're trying to say that we want to build a fair language, because are you going to deny that? If you are, then I guess there's just nothing. We're just never going to communicate.
There's nothing to be talking about. Yeah. I definitely agree. And so I don't know. I think we can leave it right there.
I think that's probably pretty good.
Next week is the end of season 1, I think.
Yeah, next week. So I think we're gonna. You suggested bringing your brother on.
Yeah, I think what we might end up doing is, I don't know. It might not. It doesn't have to be my brother, but what I want us to do with the next episode is, I'm hoping that we can get someone in to kind of just talk to us about anything, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to make this argument in an actual episode for why we think that this is the structure that we should be building. Yeah. And why we think that this view of reality and how we conceptualize and how we navigate the conceptual space is what we should be doing.
Yeah.
And I think that we should
basically summarize what we've done so far through trying to actually convince someone.
Yeah. You know me, I like to play the game on hard.
Oh yeah, it's fun. Because the thing is, it's like we really want people to challenge everything we're saying. And actually, I was going to mention to you, one of the biggest challengers that I have that it took a long time to like convince is Eunice. Eunice is she's really smart, one of the smartest people I know, and she very strong-willed, and she doesn't just accept things. You have to actually take the time to convince her. And because she's as knowledgeable and intelligent as she is, it's like I live with someone who's just constantly gonna be like, yeah, I'm not buying your BS. If you want to convince me, you're gonna have to actually do some work. Yeah. And so I feel, I'm really happy that I have someone like that to constantly test these ideas on. And so the glee, like the level to which we want people to try to pick this apart is it's true. I mean, we want it to be true. We don't want it to. If it's bullcrap, then I'll just F off somewhere, because I don't want to walk around with bullcrap in my mind.
Thank you.
Yeah. I really want people to challenge this
I keep saying that on this podcast. Like, you don't want to walk around with a false idea of what the universe is in your head. You are lost.
Because how are you going to create? How do you interpret things if your model's broken? And every interpretation just is producing contradictions all the time. So you're just taking in inputs and then you get an output, and these outputs are constantly contradicting each other. The context never makes any sense.
And you're just fine with that? So you're playing Scrabble and there's words everywhere. Then now you just, okay, well, I guess I'll just play something over there. That's not a game. Nobody should be trying to play that game. It's not a game. We should be trying to play a game where we can find a correlation between these things and connect them together. And be able to find the symmetries and be able to find our way out. And then all the way back in without getting lost, and there's just there's no information lost. Yeah, it's great.
Exactly. Yeah. When you walk across symmetries, there shouldn't be any information lost. Yeah. I mean, you at least know the extent to which these things are the same. And so you're not confusing, because when you make metaphors, the two things you're making the metaphor, they're not exactly the same object. Clearly, they're not the same object, because if they were, then it would just, and so they're different. And so you have to identify how they're the same and how they're different. And if you confuse parts of how they're different, and then you start, like if you want to imbue meaning on them, you have to do it in the sense that they're the same. If you confuse two concepts, and then you take actually a part in which they're different, and then you try to use that to imbue meaning on the other one, you're just making nonsense.
That's noise.
Yeah. It's not true. You haven't done anything.
Yeah. I really love that Donald Hoffman video though, to go back to that, because he used some words like noise, how we use it a couple of times. He even was talking about symmetry groups. Oh yeah, symmetry groups. Oh yeah, it was. Oh man, you don't know. Do you know how many times I watched that video? A lot.
Oh, did you?
I watched that video like 3-4 times.
He actually literally said data compression using symmetry groups. That's my shit.
Yeah. He said, well, it's brilliant. I really encourage you guys to check out that video. It's gonna be on our Reddit page, and we should probably try to post. Well, we probably won't be able to post snippets of it on Instagram, but yeah, for sure, check it out. The dude's name is Donald Hoffman. Pretty interesting video.
Well, and that's the thing is, I'm excited because the first season is ending, and you guys, people might be thinking, well, what does that mean? Because we just started. This is the beginning. There's a whole other realm of stuff to talk about, and it's gonna be mostly completely different. The thrust of this season, like the main thing that did all the heavy lifting, was the nomentation without representation. That was one of the things that did our heaviest lifting, because a lot of our metaphors were between computers and minds and people, or just computers and minds. The next season, the main principle that's going to be doing all the heavy lifting is going to be stability. The stability of configurations. That's going to do all the heavy lifting for the entire season.
It's going to be fun because I'm really excited to get the listeners into the conversations that we have on a
I knew there was something I was forgetting to say. Yeah. No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I wanted to start getting our listeners involved. So if you go to our Reddit and you submit a question, or you have an idea that you want to be discussed on the show, or you have a specific question about us, or you have a question about, a confusion maybe of something that
or you want us to explain something using information that you don't think is possible, you want to stress test our idea, whatever it is. We say this all the time. Let us know.
Yeah, post it on our Reddit, and anyone who submits a question, I doubt we'll get a bunch of questions starting off. So I'd imagine that if you post it, we'll probably answer it. So, we'll post your questions, your ideas.
We'll answer it. But I think we'll just leave it there. Next week, we're hoping to do something a little bit different for the season finale. We'll let you guys know, but we are already pumped for the second season.
I'm excited. I'm excited for the second season.
You guys should just let us know if you agree or disagree with our ideas. You have questions, hit us up. We are very, very much interested in stress testing some of our ideas and just, interacting with you guys. So we are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at The Bottom Total Podcast, and we are on Reddit. The Bottom Total is the name of the subreddit. So send us a message and let us know. And until we hang out with you guys again in 2 weeks,
stay turtling,
guys.
Peace.